Hello and welcome to my presentation. Batman and Joker, Apollonian and Dionysian forces. Batman and Joker are two of the most famous characters born on the pages of a superheroic comic book. Their popularity goes far beyond the paper world they are from. It reaches every mass culture's corner. The symbolic trait of those characters and their resonance on the collective imagination is not restricted to entertainment phenomena but reaches psychological, literary, anthropological and philosophical themes and concepts. From a philosophical perspective, I intend to analyze the relationship between the Dark Knight and the Crown Prince of Crime. I will refer to Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy, namely his analysis of the Apollonian and Dionysian concept, to analyze Batman's relationship with his nemesis. On the one side, Joker is a chaotic and irrational force. On the other, Batman tries with all his strength to oppose chaos and absurdity, marking his life since the murder of his parents. I will show how this fight embodies the eternal struggle between the two Nietzschean principles. First, I will investigate Batman and Joker's birth. Why do they create a whole new identity? How is Joker's reaction to suffering and irrationality different from Batman's? I will then dig deeper into the relationship and the fight between the two enemies, focusing mainly on the balance of their morbid relationship. Finally, considering the Nietzschean concept of the Übermensch, I will try to understand if one of the two characters comes to incarnate the Beyond Man, described by the German philosopher. I will mainly refer to the most emblematic stories lived by the two characters. For example, Alan Moore's The Killing Joke, The Dark Knight Returns, and Batman Year One by Frank Miller, Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, and The Death of the Family and Endgame by Scott Snyder as well. A traumatic, painful, and unacceptable event marks the birth of both the Dark Knight and the Cloud Prince of Crime, both confronting themselves with inconsolable grief and suffering. They feel suddenly emptied and drained. Both have to deal with the absurd and the absence of meaning of reality. Their world makes no sense anymore. All sense left my life, said the young Bruce Wayne in Year One of Frank Miller. Facing the absurd is traumatic. Grief is tightly linked to the experience of the absurd. Feeling the need to find a sense in happiness is not that urgent, because we feel fulfilled, at peace. However, suffering upsets the balance and brings back the human need to find a reason to survive the world. Batman and Joker's origin stories are not so different from each other. Just a bad day, as Joker says himself in Alan Moore's The Killing Joke. Man, the bravest animal and most prone to suffer, does not deny suffering as such. He wills it. He even seeks it out, provided he is shown a meaning for it, a purpose of suffering. The meaningless of suffering, not the suffering, was the curse which has so far blanked mankind. With these words, Nietzsche makes clear the connections between grief and search for meaning. Pain is unacceptable and senseless in itself. If we cannot avoid it, then we have to find a way to justify it. We need to make sense of the chaos. In this respect, the birth of the villain and the hero follow the same pattern. One bad day, in which the sense of the world falls apart, and together with it, also their identities fall apart. The difference lies in the reaction they have to the absurd that stormed into their lives. While the Joker embraces completely the absurdity and the chaos and the irrationality, Batman keeps pretending that life makes sense, that there is some point to all this struggling, as Joker himself states in The Killing Joke. Bruce faces the abyss of the absurd, but refuses it. By creating Batman's identity, he contemporarily creates a new meaning for his life. The creation of the mask is a reaction against the absurd, which has forcefully torn apart his existence up to that point. It is a way to force the world to make sense, as he says himself in The Dark Knight Returns. My parents taught me a different lesson, lying on the street, shaking in deep shock, dying for no reason at all. They showed me that the world only makes sense when you force it to. Thinks Miller's Batman during his last fight against Superman. Creating and wearing a mask, a new identity, means forcing the world to make sense. The Joker, on the contrary, has lost his identity completely. He gives up altogether his former identity, fully embraces the chaos. That is highlighted by the fact that the Joker's real identity is usually unknown. He has destroyed it. He rejects any search for meaning, almost any identity. Apollo versus Dionysus. In Nietzsche's work, the Apollonian mask is intended as an illusion, as the only way that the human being has to survive and overcome the Dionysian chaos. Dealing with Dionysus means dealing with the absurdity of being. Absurdity because it appears as inhuman, illogical, chaotic, and averse to life. Nietzsche thinks about the ancient Greeks, who, as he said, descended in the depth of being, who knew and felt the terrors and horrors of existence. For this reason, he chooses the surface, the illusion, and create the rational in the Apollonian masks. That means the ancient Greeks create truth, morals, laws, and so on. At our first glance, we can easily see in the Joker an incarnation of the Dionysian chaos, while in Batman, with his desire to impose a meaning on the world, the Apollonian force that opposes it, creating a sense to contrast with the Dionysian absurd. A chaotic and destructive force that strives to destroy every rule, and a force of will that tries to create and preserve mass, truth, order, and meanings. Both face each other, the first trying to overcome the second, which tries to stem the chaos. However, the dynamic between Apollo and Dionysus, just like the one between Batman and the Joker, are not as simple. The Joker clearly embodies a force of chaos and destruction. He is an agent of chaos, like he says in The Dark Knight. You know what I am? I am a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do with one if I caught it. I just do things. I try to show the schemers how pathetic their attempts to control things really are. Maybe the Joker is not so chaotic as he says, but his actions have no other objective than the chaos. What about Batman? He is precisely like the clown, a product of the same irrational force. As we saw, both are born from absurd and nihilism. The destruction of the imposed sense of the world and the old values should not necessarily be harmful. Nihilism can also be useful to get rid of old truths and cages. It can also be the beginning of a new creation, and that is what Bruce does by creating the Batman identity. We start to see that these two forces that seem in opposition to each other are the same. Nietzsche writes, at the end Apollo speaks the language of Dionysus. That means the Dionysian force not only destroys but also creates the Apollonian masks. Like the destruction of sense, also its creation is an expression of the vital force, Dionysian force. There are not two principles that seek to prevail over one another, but rather a single principle that manifests itself in two different ways, following a cycle of creation and destruction. What initially seems like a clash between two opposing forces is revealed as the two different expressions of a single one. That means that Batman and Joker, product of the same force, are more similar than we like to admit. We can see the proximity that links Batman with the Joker in different stories. One example is the video game Arkham Knight. Another is The Killing Joke, which ends with Batman and the Joker pull out together. Two crazy guys escaping from the asylum. Not so different. Also, speaking of madness, another remarkable graphic novel is Arkham Asylum by Grant Morrison and McKean. In the story, both locked up in Arkham, Batman and Joker appear crazy almost in the same way. The Batman drawn by McKean seems to have lost all his connection with humanity, appearing to us only as a shadow that could be understood in a Jungian sense. Both appear to us as expressions of madness, of chaos, with the only difference that one of the two still has the possibility of returning among men, to make somehow a sense of this chaos. However, as the Joker reminds us at the end, there is always a place in Arkham for Batman. In this similarity, we also find one of the reasons why the two do not destroy each other. The Joker, a chaotic and destructive force, is unable to create a meaning, a Apollonian mask. However, he can find meaning in the fight itself, in the dynamic with Dionysus, fighting for meaningless but giving meaning by virtue of the fight, as the Joker states in Endgame. The Joker challenges the Dark Knight. He does not want to kill him. No, that will ruin his fun. He wants to force him to betray his rules, to renounce his moral, to embrace again the absurd of being. At the same time, Batman cannot kill the Joker. Why have you never killed me? Asks the clown in The Death of the Family. You don't do it because I win. That's what you tell yourself. You kill me and suddenly you know what's stopping you from killing all of us baddies from going on a downright spread. Killing the Joker will prove him right. He will give up his moral, his rules, the Apollonian mask he had created and survive the chaos. However, killing the Joker would also mean embracing the Dionysian chaos again. Batman would become himself the Joker, or something similar, like one of the last versions of the Batman Who Laughs, demonstrates. So, the Joker and Batman are just the same like Apollo and Dionysus? Not quite. The Dionysian force has two faces. The Joker embodies only the destroyer. That is what Nietzsche calls negative nihilism, a nihilism that can only destroy but is unable to create. Nietzsche talks about a free spirit who laughs at our certainties and truths. The free spirit, like the Joker, is free from the old Apollonian mask. Nevertheless, he remains a slave of Dionysus himself. He is not able to overcome the absurd, to create new meaning. As the free spirit, the Joker laughs at our moral, but is himself a slave of the absurd that initially destroyed his life. Batman, on the other hand, gazes into the abyss of the absurd without abandoning himself to it, without becoming himself an agent of chaos. On the contrary, he fights for meaning despite the absurdity of existence. In the graphic novel Joker by Azzarello and Bermejo, we can see the actual difference between him and Batman. Look at you, desperate to be feared. You want to be perceived as a monster, draped in black, and yet you have that little window, a glimpse at the perfection underneath, obvious. Not the jaw, the mouth of a monster. Why do you let it be seen? Tell me why, asks the Joker at Batman, who answers, to mock you. How? Not with words. Batman does not talk too much, but showing that he is not entirely a monster. The little window of the mouth shows that he is still human. And that means that he is not just a product of chaos, but he can face it, go over it and create. He can impose meaning on the absurd. Its connection with the human world highlights that this world still makes sense. However, it is a meaning that he chooses after fast facing Dionysus, and it is what makes him a beyond man. Not all masks are equivalent. Nietzsche distinguishes on the one hand the decadent mask, dictated by fears and insecurity, which suffocate the human being. On the other hand, the not decadent ones are born from an overabundance of life force and energy. The first ones are imposed and spread as truth, although they are just stiffened and useless illusions. The second ones are on the contrary the result of the creative force and spirit of the individual. They accomplish a personal interpretation of the world. The Mask of Batman is an expression of the hero's titanism, a rebellion and independence. It is a revolt against the absurd and not an escape from it. Fighting the Joker, Batman faces the absurd over and over again, never escaping it. Like the Sisyphus from Albert Camus, it is precisely in this eternal dance with the absurd that he finds meaning. That is what Nietzsche calls positive nihilism, and that is what characterizes the Übermensch. The Joker can represent the latent free spirit, the one that can see behind the human lies, the meaningless of existence, the one that laughs at us for believing all those lies. Batman embodies the beyond man, the one that sees the absence of sense and yet fights to impose his meaning. To paraphrase the Killing Joke again, Batman can see the funny side. He already heard it, but he does not laugh because he was already able to survive it and get over it. While the Joker, in front of the absurd, takes refuge in madness, Batman faces it, and despite it, imposes a new sense. He is also able to create a new vision of the world, new values, a new mask and illusion. To conclude, we do not just see in Batman an Apollonian force against a destructive Dionysian chaos, but rather a Übermensch, a beyond man, moved by the same Dionysian force of his enemy. However, it does not seek destruction, but rather it creates new meaning. That is also shown by his connection with the human world, the world of meaning in opposition to the chaotic world of the monster. In his eternal fight against the Joker, Batman should reaffirm each time his truth. He must impose his meaning on the world one more time. So, thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and here you can find the quotes and the images artists.